The gloves are about to come off. It is time to drop your buffs. Drop. Come on in. Drop your buffs. You are correct. Yeah. Bring it in. Switch it. You are correct. You drop.
Sorry, Annalise.
Survivors ready? Drop your buffs.
Welcome back to Drop Your Buffs. I'm Sean Ross.
I'm Evan Ross-Katz.
And today we are joined by an incredibly special guest, maybe our most special guest we have ever had. Jonathan LaPaglia has been a pillar of Australian Survivor for its past 11 seasons. After 2 decades as an actor, Jonathan joined the world of Survivor as the host of its Australian version in 2016. Since then, he has consistently received universal praise from fans and critics alike for his work on the show. So imagine our surprise when earlier this year it was announced that Jonathan's final season would be Australia versus the world. In a post on Instagram announcing his departure, he said, "Australian Survivor has seen some of the most epic blindsides over the last 10 years, but this one might be the craziest of them all because it happened to me." Literally thousands of fans and former players responded to the news with outrage, support, and above all, love for JLP. He has snuffed hundreds of torches, flawlessly moderated almost as many tribal councils, and now he's here on Drop Your Buffs. Welcome, Jonathan.
Oh, well, that was quite the welcome. I mean, you've had some serious Survivor royalty on this show recently, so to put me up there as the most important guest, I mean, I don't know about that. Come on, you've had Parvati and Suri and Tony. Pretty hard to beat that.
They're fine.
Oh, they're fine.
They're fine. But you have the power to snuff their torches.
Well, I did have the power. That power's gone now. Now I'm just a mortal. I'm just a regular civilian.
Well, welcome to civilian life. I can tell you as a lifelong civilian, it's good down here. You'll like it, I think.
I'm trying to get used to it.
Yeah, you'll get used to it. It takes time, but it'll be like a glove. Over time, you'll slip it on, it'll be easy. Now, Jonathan, we don't know each other well. We know each other a little bit, but I can already tell from the tenor of this conversation, you're goofier than the show lets on to. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, probably, yes. Look, and the truth is, there's a lot of that in the show when we shoot it, but it just disappears in the edit. I see people comment like, "Oh my God, you're like so funny. You should do more of that." And the truth is, it was always there. I like having fun with the players, but they would cut it out because they saw Survivor as something that's supposed to be very serious. And there is a very serious element to Survivor, but it's also a game. It's a social game. So let's have some fun with it when it's appropriate,
So is the JLP of Survivor, is it like a part of you? Is it a version of you? Is it a character that you layer on top of who you are? How do you sort of approach the JLP of Survivor?
I think it's me. Look, it's a weird role, right? Because, Jeff has been doing it for so long. When I took it on in 2016, he'd been going for 16 years and 30 plus seasons. So he really put his stamp on Survivor. And so you're trying, for me, I was trying to figure out how do you remain, faithful to the format, and which Jeff has really, established, but also bring your own self to it. Otherwise, it's not going to be genuine, right? So that it's just trying to find that mix, the right mix of that to make it work. So yeah, there is a lot of me in there, but I'm still very aware of what the format is and what the role of the host is within that format.
So take us back to 2016 when you took the job and you had this history of seasons hosted by Jeff, and there's a very particular role that he plays. And I think a lot of people have expectations about what the host of Survivor should act like, or should talk like, or should interact with the players like because of that. So what was your approach going into it in that very first season?
Well, first of all, when they offered me the show, I mean, obviously I'm a fan of Survivor and I watched it over the years, but really as a passive viewer, and when they offered it to me and I, looked at what Jeff was doing, I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't look that hard. I can just go out there, do a challenge, and then hang out on the beach and have a cocktail and read some books. But I was sorely mistaken. It's like, it's anything but that. And I fell into the trap that most people do, in that Jeff is so good at what he does, he makes it look easy, right? He makes it look really easy. He makes it look like anyone can do it. So once I realized how difficult it was, I really spent a lot of time then going back over previous seasons of US Survivor and really watching them with an analytical eye, really trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, in the show, in the game, with the hosting style. And that's how I tried to get my way into it. Because, here's the truth, is that when you look at Jeff, when he started to now, it's very different. It's so completely different. In fact, in the first several seasons, he wasn't even narrating the challenges, right? They put up subtitles about who was leading. So it's changed drastically, but the audience doesn't remember that, right? So when I'm stepping into 2016, people are expecting me to be where Jeff is now, but he's had 16 years to work on that craft. So, when I first landed on set, I mean, wow, I was really like in over my head. I was like, wow, I really had bitten off more than I could chew, so I really knuckled down, did the work, and it doesn't look like it, but it requires an immense amount of work every day to make it happen. And you want to make it look like, my job is to make it look like I'm not doing any work. Yeah. So initially I think, we had discussions about, let's not do the iconic lines that Jeff would do, like come on in guys, or even though we've dropped part of that now, but back then it was come on in guys. Got nothing for you, head back to camp. Let's not do that stuff. Let's do our own version of that stuff. And we started toying around with that. And then I soon realized that those kinds of things are, even though some of that stuff is a little corny, and Jeff would admit that some of that stuff is corny, it's such an integral part of Survivor, and it's what you expect of the Survivor experience. So who was I or the production to start changing that stuff? It's like, let's lean into it. Let's do it, but then try and bring my own flavor to it. And I think I probably have a different sense of humor, to Jeff. And I think that's probably where I start to differ. I like to get into the innuendos, the body humor. I like to tease the players a little bit. So that's probably where more of my personality comes through within the framework of what the role of the host is for Survivor, which, Jeff is pretty much set. And I think we could have gone in a different direction, but I don't think the audience would want that. But who knows?
Well, it's interesting because when you are good at your job, as you kind of indicated, people are less likely to praise it as opposed to when it's something like hosting, which is such a skill set that many people don't necessarily recognize. I think about this a lot with what we do. We interview people, and when you're a really good interview, you don't see people going around being like, wow, what a terrific interview, they'll be like, wow, I really love that interview with X person, right? Because you are really spotlighting the person. And I think the role of a host in many senses is to spotlight the characters, the contestants, the show itself.
Absolutely.
So when you are good, and I think you were good from the outset, when you are good and when you slot in that seamlessly, I think it's hard for a lot of pedestrian viewers to recognize how difficult the job is because it just feels so seamless, because they're not feeling any wrinkle or because it doesn't feel like out of the ordinary of what we know. It's harder to recognize that that took a lot of effort because it just feels familiar.
Right. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. And, and therein lies the rub. For me anyway, it required a lot of work and prep. There's a lot of work and prep that goes in to make it seem that way. I'm not just rolling up and it's just off the cuff. I mean, it's a weird job in that, some of it is, that there's certain things that we have to hit, like all the information about a challenge, right? The challenge setup, all the questions. And so all that stuff needs to be learned, that's rote learned, and then there's another part of it that's, improvisational, that's in the moment, like the challenge commentary or the, at tribals, depending on where we're going with tribals. But even though it's in the moment, there's still a lot of prep that goes into that. Like we would do, before every challenge, the day before, we would do a challenge rehearsal. And from that challenge rehearsal, I would write pages of notes on that challenge about things that I need to, highlight. These are the things that need to be done in the challenge. These are the issues in the challenge. And so I would think about it before I get there. So I'd have 6 bullets loaded into the gun, ready to go if something that I was anticipating to come up in the challenge based on the rehearsal. So there's just a lot of prep that goes in to make it seem like it's all off the cuff.
As Sean said in the introduction, you are very beloved on this show by fans and players alike. We've had you on here for 10 years. We're coming off of a banner season of the show, so well received. You are part of the DNA of this show. It seems odd to us on the outside that you'd be fired at all, let alone now when the show seems like it's really cooking with gas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you and me both. I still don't really get it, to be honest with you. I really don't. I mean, the reason that they gave me is the reason that I put in my post, that it was ratings, that the ratings were starting to dip over the years. And this was kind of their Hail Mary attempt at doing something, flashy to try and attract new eyeballs. That was basically the reason that was given to me. But, I've seen all kinds of things online, right? I've seen, that it was, people were speculating that it was a budgetary concern, and it could have been. The network is, I don't think it's any secret, they're in trouble. And so it could have been a budgetary concern, but that discussion never came up. They never came back to me and offered me less than what my fee was. So, I don't know, it's hard to, it's hard to really know what's going through their heads. I mean, what do you guys think?
I'll say from my perspective, I assumed it had to be a budgetary thing, because why else would you do this? And with all respect to David, who I love as a Survivor contestant, I think he's great television. I don't necessarily see that it's going to draw new eyeballs. Do you know what I mean? Because the people who know David know him via Survivor. for the most part, right? If a new audience knows him, it's because of Deal or No Deal Island, and that's an American show where you can't watch Australian Survivor. So what do those ratings matter? And so it seems to me if there's like a hierarchy of who's going to get eyeballs, it's not necessarily a former player, whoever that former player may be. So that one doesn't quite add up to me.
I also think to what you were saying earlier, there's a skill set, right? To being a broadcaster, to being a host. And it sounds like what you're talking about. You're out there the day before the challenge, taking notes about all the things that you might have to sort of, articulate to the audience about things that they're not seeing. There's a rigor to the job. And again, it's no disrespect to David. It's simply a matter of this is a role that, it's not easy, right? Like it's as we were talking about at the top of this episode, it's easy to make it look easy. It is not easy in practice, right? And so that is something that I think is difficult. And the other thing that I would just add is when a show's numbers dip, I would think that some tweaks that could be made to the show. I don't think a changing of the host is the thing that's going to bring in new viewers. I would think you'd want to perhaps do some stunt casting and maybe get some famous folks up in there, like what Survivor did with Lisa Whelchel and Mike White. There's a lot of avenues with which to explore bringing in new viewers. I don't think people that are frustrated with this show or have stopped watching the show are saying, I would come back if only they got rid of that host. I don't think that's a sentiment that people are expressing.
But I agree with you. And particularly for something like Survivor, people are not tuning in for the host, right? They want to trust the host. They want to trust that the host knows what he's doing and is going to take you on this journey and safely take you on this journey, and it takes time to build that trust. And I think, over the years, the audience had come to trust that I was a constant in the show. We've had some great shows, some average shows, but I was always the constant that the audience could rely on. But I don't think the network thought any of that through. They really, like you said, some high profile stunt casting in the players, because at the end of the day, this is a player driven game. It's not a host driven game. It's a player driven game. So people are tuning in to see the players play the game. So the players better be good and the game better be good. And if both of those things are good, which basically comes down to casting, right? Because we know the game is good. The game has been so well thought out. It comes down to casting. You get that right, then people are going to tune in and they're going to stay 100%. But they might tune in initially to see, Tom Cruise hosting it. But I don't think they're going to continue watching if the game isn't great.
Mm-hmm. So when this was announced, as I said, there was thousands, literally thousands. On your post alone, I saw 7,000 comments. Then, of course, there's the network's post, and then all of the posts that followed. It seemed any post about the season whatsoever had some sentiments about your leaving under them. Universally positive towards you, not towards you leaving, but praise for you, love for you, regret that you were leaving. What was it like for you to see how much fan love there is out there in the Survivor universe for you?
Look, it was, honestly, like overwhelming and humbling because, I'm out there, on the island, just grinding away every day. And, once I finish it, I come back to the U.S. So I'm not really part of the Aussie entertainment industry. So I'm not feeling anything from the audience there. So I'm just kind of here rattling around my house. When the show airs, it's as it should be. It's all about the game. And occasionally I would see, a positive comment about me. So, but what I took from that was, well, at least the audience is not unhappy with what I was doing. That's what I took from it, right? And so to see the depth of support that's come out since the announcement is really kind of blown me away. I had no idea that that people, liked what I was doing that much, and clearly the network didn't either. But so here we are.
I will say it's not often that I see the Survivor community come together and rally around something that we all can universally agree upon. So this was, I know it's not the best circumstance, but at least we are unified in the fact that we are all outraged about it. Now, let's rewind the tape pre-Survivor. You had a very successful career in film and television for over 2 decades, as Sean mentioned. You worked on a Woody Allen film. You had a supporting role in James Mangold's Ford versus Ferrari. And you even did 3 seasons on a CBS procedural, just to name a few. But Survivor has been your lengthiest gig. And so I'm wondering, what were some of the virtues of getting to work on something for such an extended period of time?
Well, you always, every year you have a chance to try and improve your craft, and that's something that I always wanted to do. Whenever I step foot on the island, I always wanted to improve my craft from the season before. And to be honest with you, it's like I never felt like I was really on top of it. Particularly tribals. Tribals were so complicated. Occasionally tribals, I feel like, yeah, I got that. But most of the time I was just like, oh my God, this thing, I just couldn't get my arms around it. And, obviously I got more comfortable, better with it over time. But that was always something that I was striving to try and figure out. But it's probably something that I would never truly 100% figure out. It is just the nature of it. I think it's kind of an amorphous event that you can't really truly grip. It has its own life, So, and for me, the show, getting fired from the show, was one of the disappointing things for me too, because I was looking forward to going back to continue working on my skill set. So it's kind of disappointing that, I don't get that opportunity now to go back and continue working on it.
You talk about the moments in Tribal specifically and the challenges that come up with that. Is there a specific moment that you can think of throughout your 10-year run where you really did feel in the pocket? Something happened and you reacted to it in a incredibly organic way, and the thought that went through your brain, you articulated it perfectly, and the momentum that you created propelled the drama? Oh,
look, I don't know if I can specifically think of one. Look, there was many times that happened, and again, that came back to how I approached Tribal. So before a Tribal, we have a story meeting about what's going on the beach. And from that, we would develop, maybe 40 questions that we think are relevant to this Tribal to help drive the story. So in the hour and a half before I was going to step on set, I would learn those questions. So I'd have them locked in my head. So I'd go out there armed with those questions. But often what happens is what we thought the story was is not really what the story is, because we're just getting reports back from the beach, from the producers on the beach, what they think the story is. So it goes through so many layers and gets a little distorted. So by the time we get to it, it's different from what's really going on. So then I've got all these questions ready, and half the time I discover that it's not really what's going on, and those questions are kind of going nowhere. So then I got to pivot to what's really going on in front of me, and I got to really follow what's going on in front of me. And the only way you can do that, the greatest tool that I had out there was listening. right? You have to listen to what's going on in front of you. But so by listening, I was able to pick up on cues and things. And often I would be able to create situations where I could circle back to stuff, in our question list that wasn't working before, and create situations where it would work, So there were many situations where I would pick up on something and feed that to someone else, and then to someone else, and then create something, and then something would spark and it would go off, Even this season, we'd see, there's a bunch of times when it was just the right sequence of building of questions, and then it just blows up. And that was really my, that, to me, that's a good tribal. That's a good tribal when it takes on a life of its own. And it's not just a mechanical question answer session. That's, who cares?
To me, what made you such a great host of specifically tribal councils was also your ability not just to figure out the line of questioning, but to also know when to back off the questioning. And I think specifically of that episode 7 of Heroes versus Villains.
How brilliant is that?
The ultimate tribal council, where George really took the game by the horns. And it was you allowing the players to play in that way. And a lot of other people might have stepped in and said, okay, it's time to vote, or okay, time for another question. But there was this space given to the players that allowed for that vote to sort of become its own monster. And I feel like that is something that's very unsung and in your ability to host, is that, as Evan has called it on this podcast before, your soft touch to tribal council.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Look, my job is to be a facilitator, right? The show's not about me. I'm laying the groundwork to let everyone else shine, because the show's about the players in the game. And my opinion is, like, let them go off on a tangent, and sometimes it spins out of control and it goes nowhere, and we can cut that out in the edit. Who cares, right? But if you shut something down prematurely, and I had this issue in the early seasons, they always wanted me to shut stuff down. And I'm like, no, this is gold. Well, who knows? Like, it may be garbage, but they may get to a place that turns out to be gold. And that would be the case often, right? I'd let them just keep spinning, and then suddenly there'd be some nugget. Someone would just say something that would just tick someone else off, and then the whole thing explodes. And so I appreciate you guys, highlighting that. But that was something that I consciously brought to it, that I really wanted it to be about them, not about me. Let them go on tangents if they have to, and we can always cut it out. Who cares?
So we've been talking about your approach to hosting Survivor. I'm curious, in your 10 years of helming Australian Survivor, did you ever form any kind of relationship with Jeff Probst? Have you guys talked about hosting Survivor? Has he seen Australian Survivor? Do you talk at all?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm having lunch with him tomorrow. So it's funny you should ask that. But so over the years, we've had coffee and breakfast and stuff, and we'll get together and swap notes. How much he's seen of Australian Survivor? I think he's seen some of it for sure. I don't know if he's watching 24 2-hour episodes every season. But he's definitely seen stuff. In the Survivor universe, we're kind of second to the US one, right? So, he's definitely aware.
Interesting. So
what do you mean by that?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question and you can abstain from answering, but the rumor leading up to Australia versus the world, and Sean might slap me on the wrist for asking this, but the rumor was that it was going to be AU versus the US. And the rumor that populates the internet, and you can only take the internet at a grain of salt often, is that the kibosh was put down from the US, that this could not be the case, and that is why we ended up with this AU versus the world. You guys were given a 3 US cast member max, which is why, you opted for the 3 best possible gets you could successfully. But that's the rumor. And so without asking you to confirm or deny, is there anything you'd want to respond to about that?
Look, honestly, I have most of my information is rumors also. And I'm not trying to evade the question because the truth is, I was never part of the pre-production of that show or any of the shows, to be honest with you. They kept me at arm's length of all of that, and, for the last 3 years, I've actually was negotiating to be a producer on the show, but they wouldn't give me that credit. So what was going on with the negotiations of Survivor, Australia versus the world, I don't know. I've heard the same rumors, and they're probably true. I think Jeff is protective of his franchise, and rightly so. It's like they've put all the hard yards in developing the show, evolving the show, casting the show. I think they've been really, for the most part, pretty fantastic in how they've cast the show over the years. So I can understand why he's a little protective of the show and the cast. So are those rumors true? I don't know, but it seems feasible.
Perhaps a good conversation to broach at lunch tomorrow. But I'll leave that to you.
This should have been after the lunch, right?
Yeah, exactly. We scheduled this all wrong. So let's talk about AU versus the world. Just for your knowledge, JLP, I am currently working my way through season 4 of Australian Survivor. So that's where I'm at. So mind you, this was my first time meeting King George. I only knew of him. I've only seen one Shawnee season up to now. And so I have Sean. I'm receiving voice messages from Sean during production telling me how great this season is, but I didn't know if he was pilled. I didn't know if he was so in it that he couldn't see the forest for the trees. Then I come to watch this season, and like many, I am in agreement. This is one of the all-time greatest seasons of Survivor ever. And if you are of the mindset, if you are an American viewer, and I think I speak for some, who feel like the American show might have flamed out, this is a renaissance for Survivor in such a huge way. I'm wondering for you as a host, was there a moment during the season, and I want a specific moment, when you were like, holy fuck, we might have struck gold?
Yeah, probably first tribal council, to be honest with you. Like in first tribal council, when it just blew up between Rob and Parvati, I was like, wow. And almost every tribal council had something like that, right? To some degree, Look, I'll be honest with you. I was skeptical that this season was going to work. And I shared that skepticism with the EP, David Forster. And we were just concerned about how brief the season was. 16 days is so short. We were worried that the heart may be lost in that, right? It may be like eating a bowl of candy. Like you get this rush, but you feel empty at the end of it. And that's what we were really concerned about. Was it just going to be, flashy and no substance and who cares? But we were really wrong, and I think that speaks to the fact that at the end of the day, Survivor is a social game. And even if it's compressed, those social connections are so important. They're so fundamental to the game that they rise to the top. So that heart was still there. But because it was so short, it was a pressure cooker situation. So the game was really ramped up. There was no time for, pussyfooting around. You just got to get to it. And you would see that at every tribal. And often because we're, challenge tribal every single day, there's very little time for the players to strategize. So, you'd see a lot of the strategy would be happening in real time at the tribal council. And, I could see there were some people in the audience be like, oh, they shouldn't be standing up and talking and whispering, and that should be, banned. That's not what Survivor is. But it is what Survivor is. It's like you need to do what you need to do to put a plan together and execute a plan and vote someone out. And if it's because you have no time leading up to tribal and you have to do it at tribal, then do it at tribal, right? And also it makes, for great TV. So to answer your question, I think, that first tribal, I was like, oh, wow, if this is any indication, then this is going to be great. And it just continued, right? Like every tribal had something like that. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, the surprise that, that I had in those tribals was genuine. I was like, what is going on here? It's so crazy. So in a lot of those tribals, often I was just an audience member, responding to what was going on in front of me.
What a lucky audience you were.
I felt like that first tribal, I thought, yes, this is something great. We have something great here. But is this first tribal a fluke?
Yeah,
and I think it wasn't until, I think it was the fourth tribal, the one where Tony went home.
That is my favorite tribal. Oh my God.
Yeah. So wild. But there's everything that happened during the strategizing, the pre-vote stuff. But then everybody votes. Tony's sent home with the shoe around his neck. And then everybody leaves. And it's when Parvati hands her torch to you and says, can you hold this for me? While she searches for the idol. That's where I knew there was an iconic season. And then the thing that was left out was that, remember, she left her shoes at
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was such a great moment of you like staring at the shoes. And I thought, okay, now Jonathan's involved in the game. This is good.
That was a funny moment. And I love stuff like that. I think it's great that the players feel comfortable enough to do that with me, and I guess that's the atmosphere that I wanted to create for them. Like that I'm not above the game. I'm actually part of the game, and use me as part of the game.
This season of Australia versus the World is not easily available to folks in the US. It is quite challenging to find.
Yeah.
The amount of DMs we receive on the Drop Your Buffs account alone asking, how can we watch this show? And we have to, direct them towards a torrent or a YouTube, and then it gets taken down, what have you. Does it frustrate you, especially as someone who lives in the US, that this show, but especially this season, because I feel like this is very much a gateway season for American audiences, does it frustrate you, the inaccessibility of this show in America?
Yeah, 100%. I'm also thinking about, from a selfish point of view, I'm thinking about, my career beyond this, right? So, to have a show like this that works so well and the Survivor community around the world really responds to, it would have been nice to have it air here. And it did air here for a minute on Paramount Plus a few years ago. A literal minute. Yeah. That was a few months or something. I can't remember, but
I think it was 3 weeks.
Was it? It was only 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Damn. So that's kind of a bit frustrating, to be honest, if I'm being perfectly honest, for sure. But what can I tell you? That's the way it is.
So, Jonathan, in your Instagram post announcing your exit, you said, I wish I could say before we go vote, tonight is a little different, but I can't. None of that non-elim bullshit tonight. So this gets to a bigger question, because you've talked about how you were seeking producer credit. You were maybe seeking a bigger role in the show or the game. I don't know. But now that we can ask for real, what is your opinion on the highly divisive Australian Survivor twists and non-elimination rounds?
Non-elims, awful. Just awful. Awful. For years, I'm so glad you asked this question. For years, I've been warning production that we have to get rid of them, because I could see it in the comments. I could see people being pissed off about it and then threatening to stop watching. And the production's opinion was, oh yeah, that's just the audience. They say stuff like that all the time. They'll continue watching. And I said, that may be true for a season or two, but at some point they're going to start to disappear. And that's what has happened, right? There are elements of the show that really piss off the audience, and like non-elims. And if you keep doing them, they're going to leave. And they did. So I found that incredibly frustrating. And there are simple solutions to get rid of those non-elims. My solution was just cast 2 more people. Whether you got 24 or 26, the cast is huge anyway. But I'd rather have a proper elimination than these non-eliminations. It's not fair to the players, and it's not fair to the audience. Often the players would be going down this road of a fantastic blindside, and we're doing a non-elim that night, and it kills the whole thing, right? It kills a fantastic blindside, and it exposes the players who are executing this blindside. So it's doubly bad. And then the audience are like, the audience have got blue balls. It's terrible. I thought it was really damaging to the show. Now, having said that, they would try and hide it in some kind of twist. And I think some of the twists, you could argue, generated some good stuff down the road. But, on balance, I think we're better off not having the non-elims, doing some interesting twists every now and then to keep the show on its toes, but not incorporating the two, the twists and the non-elim, or the twist to try and cover up the non-elim. I thought it was terrible. I mean, what did you guys think?
I think I'm less harsh on them personally.
Okay.
I think that when I first watched, my very first season ever was Brains v Brawn, 1, and so that was my first introduction and seeing a non-elimination twist, and I think that's when you had Exile Rock with Baden and Haley, and I thought, wow, this I'm not loving this concept. I never really loved it in the US. I've never loved the Redemption Island sort of stuff, because I feel like when you get voted out, you should get voted out, right? That's the whole point. And so as it went on, then I saw the flip side of things where sometimes it worked out. Sometimes it saved your favorite, right?
Yeah, but it was never planned. It was never planned to save a favorite, though. I mean, I know the audience would be like, "Oh, you just trying to save such and such," but that was never the case.
Yeah, I started to see a situation where it could, and they sort of also fell within the same sort of period of time in the game. So I felt it's such a staple of Australian Survivor at this point that I think that the players should be savvy enough to play around it. And so I came to accept it as a part of the game as I continued to watch the seasons. Sometimes, it would totally result in a wet fart of a tribal council that had so much building up to it. But I felt like overall, the sum of all parts, I was okay with it. I was actually very surprised that there wasn't one in Australia versus the world.
Oh, really? Well, it's because, the only reason we do them is because we're producing more episodes than we have players, right? But we had the opposite problem with Australia versus the world. So we had no need to do non-elims in that format.
Yeah. I felt like, though, it would have been fun to see the world players have to contend with the non-elim because they're coming out to play Australian Survivor. So, like, let's make them play Australian Survivor.
Right. Okay. Well, but yeah. So I don't think that the non-elims were a signature part of, an intentional part of, or a signature part of Australian Survivor. It just came out of necessity, right? Because whatever deal they struck with the network, it was to deliver a certain amount of episodes. And then how do you make that work? Well, you extend the number of days, you extend the number of players, but there's a limit to it, So then they were forced into doing these non-elims. I agree with you that I did say that, that sometimes the twist that's involved with the non-elim would generate some good stuff afterwards. You could make an argument for that. And I'd be remiss to say that wasn't the case. But on balance, I'm just not a fan of it. I just think that it too often crush good gameplay, and I could also see the players wanting to pull off a big move, but worried that this tribal could be a non-elim, right? So just the fact that it's a threat was curbing them from really playing the game. So that's where I have issue with it, right? I want to see them play as hard as they can from top to bottom without trying to second guess, a production flaw that I consider to be a flaw. What did you think? What do you think, Evan?
I don't know about that yet.
Come on,
I'm not there. I'm only on season 4.
Oh, what do you mean?
Yes, there's been non-elims since the beginning.
Every season there's non-elims.
I can't say it stuck with me.
Really?
No, not. I've only seen 3 if they were in season, because I'm like 5 episodes into season 4. And yeah, I can't contribute to the conversation. I apologize. But if you're against it, if you're for it, I'm for it. If you're against it, I'm against it. That's how I feel about it.
Okay, all right. You're hopeless in this conversation. All right, hold that thought. I got a question for Sean. So, How do you feel about, now that we're on to the nuts and bolts, how do you feel about the final challenge?
How do I feel about the final challenge? I feel it should always be endurance. I love the final challenge. I think there's been better versions of it than others. My favorite final challenge there's ever been is always hand on heart idol. Just hang on to the idol as long as you can. And I think the very best version of that ever was in season 1 with Christy and Lee at the end there. It just absolutely riveting television, transcendent. I think that as it's progressed and become more of a torture-based challenge, I think there's been better versions of it. I think the best is the Brains versus Brawn torture chamber.
Right. You like it being the same challenge, basically, at the end of it.
Yeah, basically. What I want is it to be pure willpower. How badly do you want this? Whatever challenge you design around that is fine. So, for example, in the Australia versus the World final challenge, I have a little issue with that one because of the addition of the bags that you had to hold with your arms, where that created, and sure, necessarily, potentially because of the time constraints, right? But I feel like it should just be, how long can you stand here? How long can you withstand this pain? Like as few other elements brought into it as possible.
See, I thought you and I were going to be friends up until this point, but now
what now?
I don't know if I can be friends with you now.
All right, well, stick with me.
What do you want the final challenge to be?
I want it to be different. I want it to be different every season. I don't want it to be the same standing on pegs. I understand, like, how badly do you want it? I get that. I totally get that. But the problem is, the flaw with all that is that it really favors one body type, right? It favors the person who has the highest power to weight ratio, which is typically your young, fit females. And so when we get to that challenge and there's a young, fit female in there, well, I know who's going to win. So why am I watching it? And so that's the issue for me, right? Why am I watching someone standing on a peg for 5 hours when I know this person's going to win? So for me, it misses that visceral excitement of a challenge, like another challenge that has, like they do in the US, where it's much more of a horse race. You don't know who's going to win because it could be anyone's game. It's not designed specifically for one type of body type. And I like that visceral feel at the end, not knowing who's going to win, as opposed to standing on something for 5 hours. Like intellectually, I'm impressed, but it's an intellectual exercise. I don't really feel anything, from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that I don't like. And also, I feel like it affects the gameplay because the players know what the final challenge is. Why is it the final challenge is it's every other challenge, they don't know what's going to come up. The minute they turn up, they're like, oh my God, it's this. And it's either in their favor or it's not in their favor, but it's a surprise, right? Why is the last challenge the one that they know exactly what it's going to be? You're going to be standing on a nasty peg for hours. And I think that affects that affects the gameplay, right? That affects like, who do we keep? Who do we get rid of based on that final challenge? And I have issue with that. I have issue with the purity of the game because of that.
See, I would say that it's more pure and okay, so take the pegs out of it. I think we could get away from the standing on pegs. It's been several seasons of standing on some kind of a peg.
Several. Right? You try 11. 11 seasons.
Well, I guess they were standing on pegs with the hand on heart idol.
Yeah.
But those weren't like crazy pegs, were they?
They've become crazier over the years, but they were standing on pegs. The only one they weren't standing on pegs was Blood versus Water, when they were hanging out over the
hanging over the waterfall or whatever.
Waterfall. Yeah. But all the others, they're all basically a variation of Hand on an Idol.
Yeah. But I would say that is the purity of the game. I mean, the first, I don't know the number, but the first several seasons of Survivor were that. And then it's Survivor US, I mean. And as we've moved on, they've started to introduce, like, I don't want them to show up to the final immunity challenge and have it be a parlor game. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want, I like Samotion, the one with the ball, swirls through the thing. But is that like a gripping final challenge to watch? Not for me.
You said you like that?
Yeah, I like the idea of the challenge. Is it gripping to watch as a final immunity challenge? No, it's not. And so I don't know what else you can do. I think you could change the endurance challenge. If the issue is that the endurance challenges are for some reason favoring women, like, you're not going to sell me on that, because I want the woman in the end. I want the Parvati in the end. You know what I mean? I want the Haley in the end. I want those women there.
I know, but it shouldn't. But the challenge shouldn't favor one person, right? It should be a level playing field. Like, anyone can win it. Otherwise, if I know who's going to win it, why am I watching it? Right? As an audience member, why am I watching it?
I take issue with a lot of the old school challenges from Survivor US, in which men tend to have bigger strides than women because they are more often than not taller. So if we're talking about gender equity, I don't disagree with you, right? When I see the hang from a pole challenge on Survivor US, I know it's going to be, to your point, like a tough woman that's going to make it work. But I think that if we're going to examine it with that framework, I think there are a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to getting from point A to point B, that favor men. So I think there would need to be an examination of more gender equity in the challenges to begin with. But I am fundamentally aligned with you that, yes, there are certain challenges that favor certain genders, and it does make it less exciting.
So I agree with you. I mean, you could look back at all the challenges, right, and say, well, let's add. But I think the U.S. does a pretty good job of that. In that there might be, in a challenge, there might be a physical element, and then there might be a balance element, and then there might be an intellectual element, like a puzzle or something at the end. So it kind of gives everyone a chance to shine somewhere. And to your point, like, you're like, well, what would the final challenge be? I like the challenge that we do before the final challenge is like this penultimate challenge where you have elements. You have like an endurance element to it, a balance element, an intellectual element, and it's a long course, right? A long obstacle course. And what I love in those challenges is that you get lead changes, right? Someone's in the lead, and then suddenly someone else catches up, or someone's right at the back, and then everyone makes it to the end, but that person at the back finally gets to the end and then solves the puzzle just like that and wins. That's exciting to me. That's a visceral response. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. As opposed to watching someone being tortured on a peg for 5 hours. I'm like, well, fuck, I know that, it's like, but poor Luke, like Luke, I don't want to watch Luke in that much pain. I don't want to watch Luke in that much pain.
I do.
You do.
And I hear what you're saying about the long obstacle courses. But when I think back on the history of Survivor, as somebody who's watched these seasons multiple times over the course of my life, it's like, can I point to maybe a handful I can point to of, oh, wasn't that one long obstacle course really exciting and isn't it memorable? No, but you can point to all of those final immunity, like endurance challenges and be like, remember that one, because there's so much heart and grit that goes into them. I mean, people remember like Christy falling over in season 1. Like people still talk about that challenge, because of the human element brought to it. Is there like a fairness aspect or issue? Perhaps there is, but at the end of the day, our approach is always, you're making television here. And what makes better television than watching these people struggle so hard by choice, right? Like they're doing this because they want to do it. And that's what makes those final immunity challenges so like gut wrenching to me.
Yeah, I see the argument for that. But to that end, that the very first time we did it with Christy, and Lee and Elle, that to me was like lightning in a bottle. Like everything just kind of lined up. Like, it kind of blew my mind how that all fell into place. And I feel like we've been chasing that ever since. Trying to duplicate that lightning in a bottle. And my attitude is, that was amazing. Let it be what it is. And let's move on to something else, But I get it, and you know what? The producers would 100% agree with you. They think that it's if you want it that badly, then you're going to stay up there, And I guess that's the reason they keep sticking with it. But I just have issue with it that it's always going to be the same. It always has to be like standing on a peg. It's like, I don't know what other kind of, what other kind of endurance challenge can you do that's not going to last for, 15 hours? I mean, it has to have some kind of pain element to it, right? Look, it's different, different strokes for different folks, right? It's like, for me, I don't find that stuff exciting to watch. I never have, like on the US. And I think it's kind of telling that the U.S. did that in their first few seasons, but we're now 50 seasons in, and they haven't done it since season 4.
Mm-hmm. I think for the worst, but
really,
okay. We'll leave this. We'll agree to disagree here. I want to ask. So your friend, your friend Nicole Kidman, once said in a Vanity Fair video that
who said
Survivor. Nicole Kidman.
Oh yeah.
And of course, you and Evan share a mutual friend in Naomi Watts. Are there any famous Survivor fans that might surprise us?
I don't know. I don't know any. Like, I don't have any friends. So.
You never get like celebs like meeting you or sliding into your DMs to say, "Hey, just started watching Survivor."
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Well, Evan, you probably could answer that question. You're at the tip of all that, right? That's your world. I mean, how many people have come up to you and that surprised you, saying, "Hey, I'd love to do it"?
Quite a few. A lot of actors really enjoy Survivor. But Nicole Kidman, we know that she said that she would want to go on Survivor and could win. But to your knowledge, is Nicole Kidman watching Survivor?
I don't know how extensively she's watched it, but she has said that she's watched the Australian one. I mean, maybe she was just saying that to be, nice to me, be polite. I don't know, but I think she has watched some of it. Yeah, I didn't know that she said in an interview that she wanted to play. I never knew that.
Well, I don't think she said she wanted to play. She was on Vanity Fair and she was eating bugs, and she said I could win Survivor.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
She said she could
like,
win. She didn't
dried
say she
millipedes.
wants to go on and win. We
Yeah.
kind of took it, we
There's
took
a
it.
big,
there.
there's a big difference, right?
You know what?
There's a little bit of a leap there. Yeah.
Now, as you mentioned, you've got a lot of time right now because you don't have Survivor to return to. However, I believe, JLP, this is not the last time that we will be graced with you on our screens. Do you have any projects that are in the pipeline for you right now? And if not, is there a next thing that you want to do? Might you return to acting, for instance?
Yeah, of course. Like I've never left acting, but I probably took my, eye off the ball in terms of acting. Survivor has become a big part of my life over the last 10 years, and it consumes a lot of not only the doing of it, but when it airs and the social media and whatnot. It's I guess in some sense, I've allowed it to take me away from the pursuit of acting a little bit. So yeah, now I've got, more time to pursue that. That being said, the business is terrible here in America right now. I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware, but yeah, it's pretty bad. But in terms of other stuff from Australia, there's been a couple things. I did get offered a game show on another network, but I just couldn't see myself doing it. I just couldn't imagine that I would be any good at doing it. So in terms of reality, I'm totally open to doing some other reality show, but it would have to be the right fit. I don't know what that is, to be honest with you. For some weird reason, like I've never hosted before, but Survivor ended up being the right fit for me,
What about developing your own reality comp show? Because, clearly, as is evident in this conversation, your knowledge of the forum is quite robust. We've heard from Parvati, for instance, a former Survivor player and two-time winner, that she is developing her own reality comp. There are rumors out there about other past Survivor contestants currently developing reality comps. There's clearly an appetite for reality comps when it comes to the networks. It seems to be something that can be produced at scale and get a lot of money in the pockets of those who like money. Is there any part of you that wants to develop your own project?
I would certainly be open to that. I can't say that I've, that I have any ideas or that I've thought of anything that would be good. There are plenty of reality shows out there, right? But I guess I got spoiled with Survivor in that it's so well conceived. And what I love about it is that it truly is a player-driven game. Most other reality formats are producer-driven, and I'm less interested in that, So whatever it would have to be something that's player-driven. And I think that there've been attempts over the years to try and duplicate that, but none of them have been particularly successful. And you see, and it's a compliment to the format of Survivor. You see other reality shows incorporating elements of Survivor in their shows. So weirdly, Survivor has stumbled upon the magic formula, I guess, and I guess the question is, can you reproduce that in some other way? The perfect formula, and I don't know if that's possible.
Well, if you were, for some reason, ever asked to return to Survivor in the future, would you?
In Australia?
Anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I love Survivor. Like I said, I don't feel like I'm done with it. I really, really love the game. I'm fascinated by the game. I'm fascinated how it's different every season. And I love the social aspect of it with the players and the strategy. And I love being part of that. And look, that being said, it's not an easy gig. It's sometimes you're there and you're grinding away and you're like, oh my God, this is just so hard. But the product is very rewarding, I think. The final product is very rewarding. So I would definitely come back to it. Obviously, I want to make sure I'm getting back in bed with the right people. That would be part of the equation. But yeah, I would definitely be open to it.
Okay, I like that answer. It's very satisfying for fans of yours. Before we let you go, is there anything that you want to ask us? Because not because I'm trying to be self-indulgent, but rather you're not always, on podcasts, and I don't even know how much you know about the Survivor podcasting ecosystem that we are a part of. So just handing over the mic to you in case you have any questions for the both of us.
No, I don't really know much about the Survivor podcast ecosystem. I mean, to be honest with you, I hadn't seen a lot of it. I guess because I'm in it and I'm doing so much Survivor, and I watch the US one as well. Then to get more Survivor content, I mean, there's a limit. I have to take a time out, otherwise I'm completely consumed by Survivor. So I've only consumed, small amounts over the years of podcasts or, Reddit threads or online discussions about it. And given what's happened recently, I've actually been exposed to a lot more of that recently. And I guess I was a little taken aback. I just didn't realize how passionate, like really insanely passionate people become about Survivor, which is great. I love it. I love these robust discussions that are happening out there. But I didn't quite appreciate how intense it was. I don't know what else. What do you guys want to tell me about the Survivor universe that I don't know about?
I don't think I appreciated how passionate you were about Survivor. Like, you've got these strong opinions about what the challenges should be, etc., what the twist should be. So having said all of that, do you have a favorite season of Australian Survivor? Either to make or to watch, either or maybe they're the same.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm a little biased just because I've just come off this most recent one. I really loved this last season that we did. I think from beginning to end, it was supremely entertaining, right? And obviously with a very worthy winner at the end. That being said, I feel like almost all the seasons have delivered on some level, but just in different ways. The first Brains versus Brawn was a great season. The Heroes versus Villains was a great season. Titans versus Rebels was a great season. I feel like in their own way they've delivered something, and they've introduced some great characters, great players over the last decade. So it's hard for me just to say, oh yeah, that's the one, because there are parts of it that I don't like, and then there are other parts that I love. So to find one to single one out as the perfect season is difficult. But if I had to, I'd probably say, Australia versus the world. What about you?
I would think I would say heroes versus villains, but
That's a great
I feel like
season.
I feel like that the Brains v Brawn, Heroes versus Villains, Titans v Rebels, Australia versus the World. I feel like I could swap them all. But I think Heroes versus Villains stays on top for me.
It's a great season, particularly that the Seventh Tribal Council, which Evan has no clue what we're talking about. Is like, what are you guys?
No idea what we're talking about.
What are you guys like waxing on about this incredible?
Look, you guys make a lot of episodes of this show, and they are long.
Okay, but let me just put this in. Yes, they are very long. It's a commitment, and put this in perspective. New York Times named that the best was in their. Was it the top of their list? It might have been the top of their list.
I don't think it was. It wasn't a ranked list.
It was just alphabetical, right? Yeah, but it was on their list of top episodes, TV episodes for what was it, 2023 or something? Like I don't remember what year it was.
Listen, I'm gonna get there, and I look forward to it. I'm a completist by nature, and so I can't skip anything. I'm gonna be honest with you. Season 2 was a challenge for me to get through. Then I did I just didn't connect with that cast. I didn't think there were enough stars on season 2. And I just couldn't really, like, Jericho to me was not a compelling character to stay with. Just being honest.
What about Luke?
Luke didn't do it for me in his first season, but this season made me say, because I'm in the middle of 4 right now, so I'm not deep enough. But season 3 was fucking incredible. I loved the switch in power throughout. So season 3 got me all the way amped. And also there just were a lot of hot men on season 3. Then season 4 right now, I'm pretty locked and loaded. It's one of those things where I watch television for a living, Jonathan. I have to divide and conquer. So with these episodes being like 180 minutes per episode, it's like, small doses. But I'm pretty locked in on 4 right now.
Well, I mean, I think honestly, I think that's another problem with the Aussie format is that the episodes are too long. They're they're too long. It's a lot to expect of the audience, And also, I feel like it makes the editing a bit mushy because everything's a bit drawn out. It really could be tightened up and you'd have a better show because of it. So
I will say just to, one of my larger issues with Survivor is that obviously the template is so strong. It's why it's been on for as long as it has. There are some limitations to the format of the show. We are experiencing this right now. We are recapping Survivor Thailand on our Patreon on our Substack right now. And there's, an issue right now where it's like they're just decimating one tribe. And so we are watching 4 or 5 episodes where it's just a predictable who is going to go home next. And so I think that being beholden to the format of one elimination, one tribal council per episode, in some ways it can sometimes hold back certain seasons when you just wish you could kind of just steamroll past a certain hump of the show and get to the next narrative beat. But because the show is, beholden to the format, sometimes it actually can be quite restrictive. And I think that's one thing that is just a consequence of reality television's format that scripted never has to grapple with. Because if this was a scripted show, we would just say, oh, yeah, we'll take those 4 beats and we'll string them together and barrel right through that. But you can't with reality comp.
Yeah, you're going to get what you're going to get. And the other problem with the extended Aussie game, even though a lot of people in the audience are like, yeah, we want it to be 50 days. The problem with that is, on the one hand, you're asking the players to make big moves, right? Because that's exciting to watch and it's good to keep the game moving. But with that becomes visibility. If you pull off a big move, then you become visible and you potentially put a target on your back. And that's very difficult to sustain with a long game. You can do that with a shorter game and get away with it and get to the end. But with a longer game, it's much more difficult to make big moves. So what would happen with our format being 48 days? I mean, we started at 55 days and then they went to 50 and then it's now 48. It's actually next season, next 45 anyway. It's long. So what happens is in the middle, it starts to sag because players get cautious. They want to, they've made it this far. They want to get to the end. They don't want to do anything too flashy. So we have all these kind of milquetoast, safe kind of moves, in the middle. And that's one of the problems of the extended format.
Very interesting.
I would say that that's been true of several seasons. I do feel like that got fixed as of late, but I felt like that creeped back in Brains versus Brawn 2. I was feeling that way.
Yeah. Well, because it's reality, you don't know. It's like how you can only do there are only so many levers you can pull to try and keep things moving. Right? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, it's a player-driven game. So the players are going to do what they want to do.
Well, Jonathan, it's been
Evan, you're like, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I just feel like
if you say so, I wish he'd stop. I wish he'd stop raving on.
We're gonna do a part 2 once I finish the show, in which I'll have additional questions for you about season 4 through season 10.
In 8 years' time.
Yeah, as I
it'll take you that long.
Trust me, I know it's been a journey, but it's been a satisfying journey. I know you don't listen to Drop Your Buffs, but we have a lot of issues with American Survivor, a litany, one might say, and we are not big fans of the new era of Survivor. So to have a show like Australian Survivor that I think solves many of the core issues that we have with the American version, it is a respite, to say the least. And so although it can be a slog, I'm going to be honest, I love watching it, and it is so exhilarating when I do. So I am enjoying every beat of it. I'm just taking it in slowly. And it's also not a show I put on in the background while I'm folding my laundry. It's a show I want to sit and savor. Yeah. And so my slowness should be celebrated because I am putting in the work.
Yes, I'm glad that you're treating it like an exam. You're like putting in the work, paying attention, learning. Yes.
Learning. Yes. Educating. Yes. Education. We need that more than ever.
So, okay, I have a question now before you guys go, because we haven't talked enough. So, but you brought it up. So what is it about the new era that you don't like?
Oh boy, how many more hours do you have?
Sorry, that's a big question, right? Can you give me just a bullet point?
It really would come down to the casting. It is a show that has become increasingly family friendly by design, and as such, the kind of characters that are now cast are incredibly made for television. There's an eagerness to be on the show that a lot of the contestants convey. They have to be fans of the show. They have to be explicit about their fandom of the show, and their reason for coming on the show has to be rooted in something connected to Survivor. So it's no longer about wanting to have the adventure of a lifetime. It's no longer about wanting to use this money to do XYZ. It is about being on Survivor because, like the American flag, they stand and salute Survivor. And so that is a core issue with the show, as well as the fact that because it is no longer themed and it is now 26 days, same location, there's a monotony to the new era in particular. And then one last thing, sorry, I'll let you speak, Sean, but they no longer cast villains on the show. So if you look at some of the greats of Survivor, you've dealt with him, like Russell Hantz, for instance. The show has an aversion to casting quote unquote problematic people. And I'm sorry, but if you look at the history of reality television, what made it an art form, Richard Hatch being a great example of this, it is divisive personalities drive reality television. And the show is allergic to that kind of personality. It wants invigorating, inspiring people. And sure, they can be an ingredient in the larger cake or whatever you want to call it, but they are not the sum of the whole. And so I think there's just a missing chunk of casting that bothers the shit out of me.
Yeah, echo all of that. But I would also say when it comes to who they're casting and how they're playing, they all think alike, right? So they all sort of have the game figured out. and understand how to play the best game while doing the best jury management. As a result, you don't get these real human moments or real human conflicts. And I think that's why people love Australian Survivor so much, is because it takes the sort of new school format of the game, but it has this old school quality to it because of the people that they cast and the way that they play the game. I mean, it's okay to have wild cards. Like I think about Kelly on Titans versus Rebels, right? Like totally kooky, bizarre character, doesn't really know how to play the game. That's important, right? If Survivor is a microcosm of the world, we have villains, we have like dodos, we have very smart people, we have rich people, we have poor people. Like that is what Survivor should be about, is bringing all those people together and saying, here's the one game you're playing, go at it and see how they all react.
Also, I just miss people being loyal to one another. I think if you watch New Era, it's so much about building relationships in order to eventually blindside them. And there are so many things that made Australia versus the world one of the great seasons of television. And one of them is the loyalty between Luke and Janine and Parvati and Suri. And the idea that they locked in and said, we're going to do this together. There was not a point in the game where it looked like Parv might backstab Suri or vice versa. And I feel like New Era, it's all about clipping your friend. And then people go on in the first episode and they're like, I might look like the sweetest person you'll ever meet, but I will blindside you in an instant. And we're like, we know. It's clear. You're not surprising us here. Please do the opposite. Stop blindsiding us. Be loyal. Ugh.
What about Eva and Joe? You must have been satisfied with that relationship.
No comment.
They couldn't be any more loyal. Come on.
Well, but that's sure. They checked that box, and then there were 10 other boxes that they weren't checking. So, yeah.
It was like, where's the personality?
Yeah.
Look,
So
it's
for kids.
Yeah. No, I hear you. The casting is super important, and it does feel like they've cast players who really know how to play the game. They're definitely well versed in Survivor, right? But I feel like what's missing, maybe there's personality issues, but what's missing with them is, and I think this is key to any good Survivor player. If I could pick one thing, one attribute, it would be being a risk taker. You have to be a risk taker. You can have all the knowledge in the world about how to play the game, but if you're not willing to take a risk, it's just academic. It's useless, right? And I see that happening. They talk themselves, they go around in circles talking about all the possibilities and permutations and ways they can approach this vote, but they lack the ability to take risks. That's why someone like George is such a great player, because he's willing to take the risk. He knows it could completely blow up in his face. But if it works, boy, there's going to be a huge payoff. But he's willing to take that risk, And that's what makes the game exciting when it is exciting. And maybe that's what's missing from, the new era is the risk takers.
I also love the presence of those people who are not familiar with the show or the game.
Right.
Two examples come to mind. Kirby, of course, doesn't know anything about this show, comes in, learns the game, is a risk taker, and crushes it, right?
Totally.
And then the other example I always point to is Chrissy Zaremba on Blood versus Water, who maybe wasn't taking the risks, but wow, incredible television character.
Yeah, she's completely hilarious, But look, it can go both ways. Sometimes you cast someone that doesn't know anything, and they're a complete dud. They don't know how to play the game, and they're not entertaining either. I mean, Chrissy was, she didn't know how to play the game, but she was incredibly entertaining, And initially I would bump on the fact that they'd be casting people who didn't know how to play the game, but I think you're right. I think it's good to have a few of them in there like that. It, like you said, it's supposed to represent a microcosm of the society at large, right? So let's have a bit of everything in there, not just a bunch of super fans.
And also look to the story of Suri, who literally came on this show, and this was everything she was not. And by immersing herself in this world and, putting herself into the challenge that was the entire show, she learned along the way and became a fan favorite. So I think one of the virtues of not casting people who are fans is that they can sometimes, the battle to become great might be a little bit steeper, but I think it's all the more worthwhile watching them persevere against a challenge that they didn't even know they faced.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned Suri, how about that? Her final tribal with the fire making challenge when she was so close. How crazy was that?
Crazy.
Heartbreaking.
I know, right? She was right there. I mean,
and that's one of those things where, if they had a little bit more time, I genuinely think they would have put Janine up against her and Suri would have gone to the final. And then what would have happened?
Yeah, well, we'll never know, right?
Yeah.
Well, JLP, it's been a thrill. I hope that you will consider coming back on down the line. We will have you anytime.
Once Evan's finished watching.
Once I'm finished watching, yeah. But yeah, thank you for all that you have done for the Survivor community, your many contributions. And I would say thank you for your candor. I think that what a lot of us fans are craving is just more of an understanding of how the sauce is made. And it's nice to feel like, Sean mentioned something that I said about you in the past, your light touch, but I think another one of your virtues is your ability to communicate to fans in a very human way. I think not just Survivor, but many of these shows kind of like to create a space between the show itself and the audience in a sense of putting the show sort of out of sight. And I think you've done a great job of, imbuing a lot of humanity into your role, which in turn, I think, creates people having a deeper connection to the show.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, good. I'm glad we've had this conversation.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you for so much time. And we hope that we'll see you again very soon on our TV screens because we can never get enough, JLP.
Look, from your lips to God's ears.
We're actually in with God, so we can make
perfect. I'm talking to the right people.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember Heidi from Survivor Amazon, but she came on our podcast. She doesn't do podcasts, and she told us that she prayed to God and asked if she should do Drop Your Buffs, and God told her yes. So we take that as a sign that God is watching us. God smiles down on Drop Your Buffs, and you being on here means that God smiles down on you too.
You are God's voices. I love
exactly.
That.
Thank you. Finally, someone says it.
It's really the ultimate endorsement. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. And also, I want to say, Sean, great job out on the island. It looked like you were having fun. I don't know if you were or not, but it looked like you were having fun with Ricard and Nick. I mean, I know being stuck with Nick for that long must have been torturous, but you guys did a great job. She created some great content with the exit interviews. It was great.
Thank you. And it was amazing to watch you work.
Oh,
I was watching.
Thank you. Oh, good. All right.
Bye, Jonathan.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.